Hey, I appreciate your comments and questions. And I just got a good question in, which was from a viewer who said that they're in a band with experienced players, and for whatever reason, they don't have the opportunity to work with a sound technician. So they have to mix their own shows themselves. Now, fortunately, they have a digital mixer and a tablet, and so they can pop out into the audience and do some quick adjustments while they're playing. But that's pretty difficult to do well. And they say some of their shows come off sounding pretty good, and they get good reviews from the audience. Sometimes the audience gives them advice saying this instrument or that one is a little out of balance and they need to make adjustments. And so what can they do without having a sound tech to put on smoother, more consistent sounding shows for their audience? And how do you best mix a show from stage? Well, that's really challenging because the show sounds completely different on stage as it does out in the audience. So you can't really judge things from the stage. You need to be out in the audience. And being out in the audience with the tablet, mixing the band while trying to play in the band is pretty difficult. So what I would suggest is try to have a show which is a good bass line. That is one of those evenings where the band sounds pretty good. Now, maybe you can enlist the help of somebody who can help get you there. If you can find a sound technician who can help get you dialed in, or maybe it's just luck of the draw and you have a good evening getting things dialed up where the band sounds pretty good. I would double check on the mixer the input gains of all of the input channels to make sure that they're reasonable. And so the input gain is the first control usually in the channel, and you want to adjust that so that you're getting a nice, powerful level signal into the channel that is getting about as loud as you can have without it overloading the channel. So when that instrument on that channel is playing, I want the peaks to be getting up close to the top, but not exceeding the top on that input gain control. As you adjust that gain control, of course, that channel is going to get louder in the mains, and it will also get louder in the monitors. So be aware of that happening as you make those adjustments. And so get the channel gain adjusted so the channel is as loud as it can be without overloading on each of the instruments. And then go through and tweak the level so that the monitors and the mains all sound properly and balanced for all the instruments. So that's a good starting point. Now, at this point, I would turn on compression on all of the major instruments that are playing, which would be basically all the instruments: lead guitar, rhythm guitars, keyboards, vocals, possibly some of the drums, such as kick and snare drum. So I turn compression on those channels, and as a starting point, I would probably pick an attack setting of about 30 milliseconds, a release setting of about 300 milliseconds, and a compression ratio of about 4:1. Those are my starting points for most compression operations and channels. You might want to vary those parameters according to your taste, but that's a good place to start. And then with that instrument playing, coming into the channel, adjust the compression threshold until you see the compression action on the compressor's meters saying that you're doing about 6 dB of gain reduction. So we're just starting to control the peaks on that channel, and that will cause the channel to get a little bit quieter, so you might need to bump the channel level up by just a couple dB to compensate. Now at this point, if the band is sounding good and you see a little bit of compression happening on all of these channels, save that setting on your mixer as the new starting point for your next upcoming show. And what this should do is the compressors will ride gain on all of those channels a little bit. So if a guitar gets a little bit louder, the compressor will step on it and prevent it from getting too much louder. Now, it will let those volume changes come through. So if somebody turns up on stage, yeah, they'll turn up coming through the PA system, but not quite to the same degree as they would if the compressor wasn't in place. And so that compressor will keep everybody's dynamics from getting too far out of hand. So if people change their balance on stage, well, that'll still change the balance out in the audience, but not by as much of a degree. And so by applying compression to all of your channels and having it compress just a little bit, that will help keep your band mix in the pocket in balance as you move from song to song to song. Now, of course, the real fix to this is making sure that the band themselves is completely consistent. So that's just a matter of practice and becoming a really good musician. The ability to play one song to the next, and maintain a smooth, consistent level. One of the places to start with that might be the effects that you're using. So if you have a pedal board full of guitar effects, for example, you might want to check your settings so that you can move from one effect to the next, and have each of those patches come through at approximately the same apparent volume level so that there's no jarring changes when you change pedal effects. So that's my tip, is explore the use of a little bit of compression in your channels and just work with your band to make sure your band is as consistent as possible. And that way, if you can get the mix set right at the beginning of the evening, it'll probably stay pretty close to that through the rest of the night. Now, of course, that's no substitute for having a good technician out there helping keep your show in balance and applying just the right effects at just the right points in time. But it should get you a little closer to a balanced, good-sounding show. So I appreciate the question. If there are other questions out there, feel free to drop them in. I'll be glad to address them if I can. And I also appreciate you tuning in, watching the video, and hope to see you again here soon on another upcoming episode.